Good morning, friends. I'm coming at you from my office, and I hope you guys are having a great start to, this is week 4, I think, of classes for most of you. I just wanted to say thanks for signing up to being a G3 leader and being part of multiplication on campus, and that idea that you are giving up your time and your space to care for and love other people and pour into other people is just huge. And we're really, really excited for each and every one of you. I think there's about 15 of you across our hub that are saying yes to leading a G3 or co-leading a G3. And we hope that number grows because we just are so thankful for you guys being part of developing students and caring for students and loving students and helping point them towards Jesus. And that's really what a G3 is about getting into the lives with one another and sharing life with one another and pointing each other towards Jesus and letting our lives be transformed by His Spirit that lives inside of us. And so I just want to, like, any nerves or uncertainties, just kind of lay those aside because the living God is inside each one of you as a believer, and He is going before you as you lead these groups. And so you're each going to do a great job. But I do want to talk a little bit about kind of how the coaching and the care for you as leaders is going to happen. So as a G3 leader, you all should also be in a leaders G3 that will meet about twice a month. And the hope there is that it's a spot for you to be poured into and developed. You're going to be poured into and developed through being a G3 leader and being in your G3, but we want to pull you together with a couple other leaders and a staff person with crew, and hopefully that space can be a great space of development and care and shepherding and encouragement for you a couple of times a month. And so that, if you don't know when those G3s are happening yet, the leaders G3s, you will be hearing in the next couple of days when those are happening. So I just want to give you the heads up about that. And then the second thing is to talk through how should you structure your G3? And some of you that were at the kickoff retreat for Fenway got to hear this. I did a little seminar and we talked about something called the 3/3. And so here is a little printout. You're going to get access to a Google Drive, and in that Google Drive is going to be these coaching videos, but also is going to be any resources I send out. And so if you're like, I don't remember where that was, or I don't remember if I got that, you can always go to the Google Drive and look. So the idea of a 3/3 is that you map out each week your G3. And so each week you should do about a third of your time looking back on what God has done. And so that could be worship. It could be caring for one another through mutual care of, like, how are you doing? Highs and lows. Where did you see the Lord work in your life? Some accountability for things that you want to be held accountable for, and even some vision for living missionally with one another. And so you don't do all of those things, but you spend a little bit of your G3, about a third of your time each week, kind of focused on looking back. And then you spend a third of your time looking up, and looking up means getting into God's word, reflecting on who God is, growing together as you understand who He is out of His word. And sometimes this time in the word, it's easy to plan and think like, oh, we're just going to go through the book of Philippians, or we're just going to read this book that's a good Christian book. And I just want you guys to pause for a second. One of the things I'm learning right now is before I even start to prepare, before I even start to read one of my seminary books, or before I start to prep for one of my small groups, is just pause and pray and ask the Spirit to be with me as I prepare, or as I read, or as I enter God's word, and that I would be aware of how the Spirit is leading and directing. And so I would love for you guys to do that before you stop to prepare, or before you enter into God's word, in hopes of preparing something for your small group. So the first few weeks, you're going to want to get into the word and talk about the gospel, no matter who's in your G3, and how that changes everything. And how does the gospel change everything? Well, the gospel turns our lives upside down from what the culture says it should look like. And so it changes a lot of things. And so for the first few weeks, maybe the first 2 weeks, you focus on what is the gospel, who who is Jesus and what a difference does he make in our lives. And on this little 3/3 worksheet, I have some suggestions for ways you can do that. I'm also always available for coaching, and you can also talk to your G3 leader, your leader's G3 leader, to get some tips. So that's the first one. The second one is you want to, longer term, you want to think about what book of the Bible are we going to study in this time. And we're really encouraging you guys this first semester for every G3 to be going through a book of the Bible. And I would not choose, like, I don't know, I wouldn't choose Leviticus probably. I'm laughing because I am at church right now. We're going through Leviticus and it's actually been great. It's a great book to go through, but don't do Leviticus. Do something like one of the Gospels or First John or Philippians or Colossians, something like that that's a little bit more manageable, and kind of map that out for the semester. So you'll do that with your group for a third of your time. Is you'll look up, and that will be your time in God's Word, and like doing observation, interpretation, application as you look at God's Word. The third part of your G3 should be looking forward, and that is a time of equipping. Like, what does your group need? So maybe it's sharing testimonies, maybe it's sharing the gospel, maybe it's casting vision for something, like maybe a heart for the underserved, a heart for the world, like those sorts of things. And then it might be even goal setting. Like, it might be encouraging each other to take goals serious. So maybe it's like, I want to spend 5 minutes in God's Word every day, and that you would think about what that step would be. And so that's kind of the last third should be the real practical, and also the time for prayer and affirming one another. And so if you think about your G3 in that format, a third, a third, a third, and you cover looking back, looking up, and looking forward, you will have a pretty well balanced hour and 15 minutes together as a G3. And if you have a tendency to hunker down on one or the other of those, I want to really encourage you as co-leaders to make sure that you're thinking through that rhythm, a third, a third, a third. And so that's the first big thing. And the second big thing is figuring out what content you're going to use for the looking up portion. And like I mentioned, we really would want to encourage you guys to choose a book of the Bible to go through. And I've listed out some ideas on this page that you can have access to, but we want to discourage you away from reading a book that is not a book of the Bible this time, or just kind of jumping around all over the place. Part of that is just to give you some ease of like, okay, if you're studying the book of Colossians as a G3, you personally are probably going to be in the book of Colossians a lot, and that like continuous study and reading and being in that book will allow you to have a better grasp on the book. And so we'd encourage you to do that. It doesn't mean you might some weeks not take a break and look at a psalm or something like that, but just that you're in God's Word and you've picked the book or the few chapters you're going to go through for this semester, if it's a bigger book. And then the next thing is this idea that getting your G3 up and running is one of the most challenging things you'll do. But once it's up and running, it kind of runs itself. Once people have it in their calendar, you just need to remind them and encourage them to come. But getting it up and off the ground is really significant. And so here's a couple of things that I want to encourage you with. One is that you over communicate with the people in your G3 ahead of time, and you tell them how excited you are that they're in your G3. The second thing I want to encourage you to do is to just start the G3. And so here's a great example. This week, I'm starting one of my leaders G3s. Not everyone can make it, but I'm just going to start it because we need to get started. And then the other person will be able to come next week. And so that's kind of my heart, is you guys start your G3s. There might be a few people that aren't able to make it, or one or two that have conflicts, but just get it off the ground and get it started. The second thing is it's going to take you more time and more energy to build connections and community than you really think it is. And so you're going to want to really spend some time thinking and planning with your co-leader about what the looking back part will be for the first couple of weeks. Like, how are you going to connect with them and get to know each other as a community? Because most likely this G3 is made up of new people. You're not in the same G3 as you were last year for the most part. And so it's going to take some time and energy to build those connections. The last thing I want to say is make sure you're meeting somewhere that is conducive for a G3. So probably not in the middle of the student union at a busy lunch hour, but maybe plan on meeting in a quiet lounge, or plan on bringing some snacks or grabbing boba before the G3 starts or something like that, so that it's an environment that is welcoming. The very last thing I want to tell you guys is that one of the things that's really important to remember is this G3 is not just about knowledge, and that the posture of our hearts is so much more important than the knowledge we gain. And that if the posture of our hearts and the posture of the students' hearts that are in your G3 with you is soft and growing in the Lord, the knowledge will come. And what I mean by that is that the anchor of your G3 should not be, the end purpose is not to learn knowledge. The end purpose is to grow in your relationship with Jesus and to grow in your understanding of what living out community looks like in light of Jesus. And so with that in mind, you want to anchor on a book of the Bible, but you want to be aware that as we're reading God's word, that the relational positive connections need to happen in that small group, that G3, or the knowledge that they're gaining from God's word and that you're gaining from God's word isn't actually going to sink deep and make change in your life. And so you want to work real hard on the relational and the care and the connection and community building while still being anchored in God's word. Don't let the gaining of knowledge become the top priority, because that isn't the top priority. The top priority is that our hearts and our posture towards the Lord would be soft, and so we would grow in our relationship with him. That's all I have for you right now. I'll touch base again with a video in a couple of weeks, but if you have any questions, let me know, or Todd know. We'd love to help you, or whoever your leaders, G3 person, staff person is, which is probably one of the two of us, maybe a couple more. Thanks, you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.